Through the ups and downs, we stand tall in this journey of growth. Day by day, through the ups and downs, we stand tall in this journey of growth. Day by day.
Hello?
Hello, how you doing?
Yeah, very well. Well, very, very tired because I was drinking cacao.
I was gonna
Were you going to say why? Why are you tired?
Yes, I was gonna say, why are you tired?
I was waiting for that. And I thought, oh, she's not going to ask, so I'll just tell her.
And why are you tired this morning, Juliet?
Well, last night I went to a gong meditation and cacao ceremony.
See, is the gong not supposed to put you in a state of relaxation to be able to then drift off into a nice sleep? That's how I
Yeah,
found it.
but the
Well, found
cacao
it.
is,
I've only been once.
yeah, definitely. But the cacao is full of theobromine, which stops you sleeping, which is interesting because you've just told me that it doesn't stop you
No,
sleeping.
that's-
And I can't work
I
this
will
out.
have a
Why doesn't
cup
it?
of, I will have a mug of cacao, but then I have it with coconut milk. Does that do anything to it? I don't know. I just have it instead of having cocoa, and I've done it since the paleo days. I've had it for in my hot chocolate in the evening.
I don't know. I might have had too much.
Is there such a thing? Yeah, I'll
I
have
think
three
there is.
three teaspoons in a cup in a normal mug before I go to bed. Not every night, but I do have it to go to sleep.
And what is it? What like cacao nibs or
No,
uh,
the cacao powder.
um I just from the supermarket.
No, from a seller on Amazon. Find
Well,
it.
maybe you want to investigate what they're really giving you. Um no, I think it obviously affects some people and it doesn't affect others quite so much. Someone last night didn't have cacao because it gives them migraines, so I don't know
Yeah,
how all that
ceremonial
works.
grade cacao. Been drinking it for the last 10 years, Julia.
Yeah, well, it's like caffeine, isn't it? Effect because it's the
I can sleep
theobromine
on
in
that
it,
as well.
which has the same kind of effects as caffeine. But it's weird that it. I'm going to go back to Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep book and look at this, why it affects some people and why it doesn't affect others, because surely it should just do the same thing in the brains of everyone.
Yeah, Pete can sleep on coffee. He'll have a coffee when he gets off nights to go to sleep.
Yeah, Matt too. I coffee's not so bad, but the cacao, I think there's a limit on how much I can have, and if it just it's like I'd love to wear a sleep monitor and see whether I'm actually like what state I'm actually in because it just feels like I'm on the cusp of sleep for the entire night. It's horrible feeling.
Oh.
It's like
Yeah,
an
Peruvian
awareness.
cacao, raw, natural, and vegan. That's the one that I get. I get it in 1 kilogram thingies.
Yeah, it's a horrible thing. But maybe maybe it's something different. Maybe I'm just aware of
Or maybe
myself.
it's the
Maybe
whole
I'm conscious while asleep.
spiritual
Yeah,
being of being in that environment that's not just woken you up in yourself, but also woken up another part of you in your subconscious that needs to,
that has an
explore.
awareness while I'm asleep.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
profound.
Profound.
Yeah. But it was good anyway. It was a nice evening. Um, and how are you?
Yeah, all good. I did some, as I said to you last night, I was massaging my dog. Just having a moment with him.
That's
He,
nice.
he likes, he doesn't like a lot of love. He gets a bit, it all gets a bit too much for him. He's like, oh, you're too close now. But
Oh,
last night he was letting me,
he's got attachment issues.
yeah, he was letting me indulge myself. Oh, he's got hiccups now. He was letting me, he has actually got hiccups, I'm eating his breakfast too quickly. But yeah, I was indulging him, or myself, should I say. But yeah, other than that, all good. What are we talking about today then? Should we get
We're
to it?
well, yeah. Although, yeah. Okay. Well, I was
Go on.
just thinking
Oh,
about this
sorry.
conversation we've been having about phones,
Oh, okay.
but maybe I think this is relevant for our conversation today.
Oh, I see.
Well, what's our conversation today is
Yeah, about what did you say? Should governments penalise people for unhealthy lifestyles?
mm,
Now, you
what's
came
your
up with the
stance?
idea for that. You see, I wouldn't say no to this. I would say to a degree, but then how far do you take it? But also, I heard so there was another argument, and I don't agree with this, but it does balance it slightly. When I was listening to a podcast, I love listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
It's not actually balanced research, but anyway, this was and it was basically saying that fair enough, you could be at the peak of health and not need the use of our National Health Service in the UK, for example, because you're going to be really healthy, but then you live longer, rather than somebody who's really unhealthy and eats a load of shit and dies at the age of 45 from a heart attack. Well, they're not then going to be using any other resources for those other 40 or 50 years that somebody who is really healthy might live for.
That's a
So,
really valid argument, isn't it?
yeah. But not that I necessarily agree with it, but it was something I had, and I was like, actually, that's not a bad argument.
Yeah. So I
And I'd
remember
never thought of it that way before.
I've never thought of it like that. And also, so during COVID, I remember people talking about how the government were, this was one of the kind of conspiracy theories. Not that I like the word conspiracy, and also a lot of the conspiracy theories are now coming
One of the
true.
real one of the
Yeah,
the truths.
one
I
of the
was listening
truths.
to
I
something on
mean,
that the other day
I
about the
know some things.
accountability of who was telling lies on there. Yeah.
Yeah, I know some things were quite far-fetched, but some of these things that were written off as conspiracy now seem to be fact. But
Mm.
let's just use that term for ease. One of the conspiracy theories was that the government were going to put us on a point system, and um, so you'd get points for it. It was this kind of like we're all going to be
Was it
paid.
the social stuff that because China are doing it now, aren't they?
Okay,
Where
so
where you
yeah,
cross the road and if you jaywalk, they will identify your face, and then you'll have points taken off you and bank accounts shut down and immediate fines taken from you straight from your bank account. No
exactly that kind
questions.
of thing.
Yeah,
And if you get points, you'll get kind of be allowed to travel
points don't
and
make prizes.
that kind of thing.
Mm.
And so I remember one of the arguments at the time was because my perspective was, well, I'm really healthy. I think that I choose a
Yeah,
healthy
yeah.
lifestyle, so this would suit
I'll take
me.
my chances. Yeah.
Yeah, but actually, on the flip side, who's making the decisions about what's healthy? And
Well,
so
yeah,
we
yeah, this
say,
is it. Because look at some, I mean, I don't even know who our health minister is at the moment, but going on historical, I mean, they're not exactly the pinnacle of health, are they, to look at? Come on.
oh, I think lots of
Some of our,
people, there's
who's our health minister at the moment?
lots of the
Yeah, go on.
government, lots of the government advice, even so far as putting calories up on the menus and things like that. We know that calories
Yeah,
mean nothing,
yeah.
and yet so many people now are making their. I've got a client who had gone into Pret or somewhere like that and really struggled to know what to choose because of the calories being on the board, but would have been more likely to choose, I don't know, perhaps a muffin, for example, above something that was
Yeah, because it's got less
potentially like stuffed full of
argue-bias.
avocado
Yeah.
because of the calories. So
Yeah.
the government, them making that decision is really um, not ideal. And where I just cut that conversation about the phones because there's certain things that like we're choosing maybe to eliminate our phones a little bit because of the mental health benefits.
Mm.
But what if they consider use of phones a healthy option? And or on the flip side, it's not on the flip side, but a different thing as well. We were just talking about you using the Bluetooth earpods, and
Yeah.
I said, oh, I don't like the Bluetooth going through my
Do
head.
we do we choose what do we choose exactly as well, like what we think is health? Because like to us um where we choose to live a more healthy lifestyle, but then we might have, I don't know, like dessert when we go out and things like
Mm,
that, say just as um would that be considered, we're not being 100% healthy, therefore, I mean, like, how far would you take that you're not allowed to have desserts anymore unless you're a certain whatever, I don't know, like
yeah,
how far would they take it? Don't take away
and
my desserts. Do you know what I mean?
and
I
like
like
me
them when I go
choosing to
out.
have cacao last night, even though it's going to stop me sleeping when not sleeping, is that
Mm.
there are our
You
views
haven't
on
had eight
what's
hours of sleep,
healthy.
therefore you're not allowed any coffee today.
Yeah, our views. Well, But more, I'm thinking, if we were to stand up and say, yeah, because we make all these healthy choices, we think the government should tax based on healthy living. But we're also saying, there's things that we choose to do that other people wouldn't because they perceive them as, we only do the things we know or that we prioritise, don't we?
Yeah. But I would also say that I'm quite open to if somebody was to then prove with evidence and or just even a theory with something backing it up, then I would look into it. But this brings me on to another point of people not experimenting, and I don't know if we've spoken about this before, but not experimenting with their own health. So one person, like you were saying about people not understanding the calorie aspect, that that perhaps something is more healthy than another, but the fact that not everybody can eat everything, and
Yeah,
um, and certain things may make you put on weight more than the next person, perhaps. And particularly when you've got the hormone fluctuations, and you get to a certain age. Like I could eat whatever I liked 10 years ago and just do a ton of exercise and not put any weight on. But now it's things have changed, my body's changed, but I recognise that, and therefore I'll experiment and do different things. But not everybody knows that, or people feel entitled to be able to eat anything they want, so they'll then go to the doctors. I've got I've got IBS, for example, which I think is, I'm not a doctor obviously, but I just think you're not allowed, you're not built to eat everything. So if your stomach is telling you that it doesn't like a certain type of food, for example, then don't bloody eat it. Don't eat
yeah,
it. Don't feel entitled that you can go and get some medication that will then bypass whatever it is. And that's another strain on our services, because people feel entitled that they can eat everything.
yeah.
I'm like,
Uh,
don't eat it, or don't drink. Like, there's people that I know, one of Pete's friends, and he's got IBS, but he drinks a ton of alcohol. No, you haven't got IBS. You just shouldn't be drinking alcohol. Stop drinking alcohol then. See what happens then.
yeah, I get really annoyed when Matt doesn't take care of his health, because I think you're not taking care of your health, and then when you hit whatever age, it's suddenly going to come back at you and you're going to
Mm.
be struggling, and who's the one who's going to have to look
Yes.
after you? And if I'm focusing on my health and putting
Straight in
in
a home.
effort, I'm like, that costs
Straight in a
money.
home. Don't pass go. Yeah, just, yeah.
But
Not
I
married, are
think,
you?
this kind of this attitude of my body, my choice, yeah, it is, as long as it's your body, your choice when you're stuck at home. Like, I think I do think there's wider implications. Older parents, not older parents, but parents of adult children not looking after themselves and then having an expectation that their children will look after them. And I really struggle with that, because I think you're doing what makes you happy in the moment. I guess it's like smoking, it's like doing something
Mm.
really destructive like smoking, when you know that it could give you cancer, but you're only thinking of yourself and your need for it
You don't see
rather than
you
the
don't
wide.
see any instant downsides from smoking, do you? You don't see the bad things that it's doing to you immediately,
No, no. But then,
even though you know it's, that it's not good for you.
yeah, there's another part of me that has to have a little bit of compassion, and I think, I
Yeah,
don't know if you feel
yeah.
like that too, because
No,
you've
I
been there, you've
do.
experienced it, and you know
Yeah.
how hard it is.
But I think I think it's another thing is this, the realizing that you've got a problem, and then being self-aware enough to go and then get help. So say you are, I mean, I know people that are really really overweight, but they just don't seem to, either they've always been like that, and then they perhaps don't seem to be worried about it on the outside. I would never say anything to them, like, I don't know them well enough to have this conversation with them, but I do wonder if people do, they've obviously got something there, as you and I know from fluctuations in my weight and things, addictions and things that I've had, like drinking and smoking. They were a root cause, they were the symptom of something else. completely. So, but it's recognizing that, isn't it? But it can also go the other way though, can't it? With people being addicted to exercise and being,
Yeah, I was about to say, and do you think, you've mentioned a couple of times people being overweight. I've seen people who are, well, people who are really slim but eat horrendously. They've just got
yes, yeah.
that build, and their metabolism is fast enough that eating in a unhealthy way doesn't affect their weight, but they're probably, in fact, I do know someone who's very slim, eats very poorly, and has very poor health, like lots of conditions, but would probably never attribute that to what the foods they're putting in their body. And from an outsider's perspective, you would think they were
Do you think
super healthy.
is that a lack of education? Do they realise? Do they understand that it's the because I remember when, and I was talking to Pete about this yesterday actually when we were saying about what we were talking about today, and I remember a girl that I went to school with, and she had eczema all over her face. I mean, can you imagine being
Mm,
a teenager in secondary school? And I remember she just had scabs all over her face. Now, guarantee that was down to she was a bit overweight as well. I can't remember now because at the time you didn't think about food being because you weren't educated in that way. It was like, no, food doesn't cause that,
yeah.
you know. But then I guarantee now that that was maybe down to the food that she was putting into her body or
Yeah.
environmental factors. And eczema on your face is not, that's something. But then you weren't educated enough. So does this person understand, or is there an excuse for not understanding now because all the information is readily available? You just type in anywhere, like I've got, whatever, say health condition, eczema on my face, it's going to say, right, these are the things you can try. Do people just not want to try it because it's hard?
I don't think so. I think that you and I are lucky to have found the places we found that gives us this information. I don't think it
But are we
always does say
biased
that.
now?
Well, no, I think I think we're in a bit of an echo chamber. I do
Mm.
think, I've seen things pop up that recommend medications, that recommend creams, that don't recommend diet at all. And I've
I just
also
say, just
seen,
don't bloody eat, fast for a few days, that'll clear everything up.
yeah, yeah,
And then you can
yeah.
reintroduce. But I'm very much like, yeah,
But
any skin complaint.
I've mentioned, okay, obviously we have to bring this into every podcast, but I've mentioned the
Oh,
Zoe.
I
You
didn't like to
didn't.
bring it up. I know you don't like to talk about it. So.
It's just so relevant. But for ages for years before I did that, it was flashing up on my. I mean, he did he did a study in COVID, so that's when he first came
Who
on my
did?
radar. Tim Spector,
Oh,
who
sorry, right.
leads the Zoe
I
study.
forget that. Yeah, I
Sorry.
forget that he's doing that because when you mentioned him the other day, I'm like, why you keep going on about Tim Spector for? And then yeah, it's clicked. All
Tim
right, calm
Spector
down,
did
Tim lover.
Tim
Yeah.
Spector did the COVID. I don't know what it was, but he asked people to fill in their symptoms or whatever every day.
Oh,
And so that he was on my radar from that. And I guess that's why he would then pop up on my socials a lot.
yeah.
And so I've been seeing the Zoe thing for ever since it came out, really. So in my mind, and I see it all the time,
I just heard
it was
Stephen
popping up
Bartlett banging on
all
about
the
it
time.
constantly.
That as well, that too. But I've said to multiple people about the Zoe, and they say I've never heard of it. Now, from my perspective, the whole world should have heard of it because it's
Yeah, you see,
so
this is
in
it,
my
isn't it?
face. So I think some
Yeah.
people, and
Yeah.
um, I worked with a client yesterday who's got quite a backstory. I mean, it's a really hard story. They're on a lot of medication for a variety of reasons that may or may not be necessary, but they they're struggling to lose weight. They're not. If you were to see them walking down the street, you wouldn't say they were overweight, but it's having an effect on their other health conditions. The doctors are recommending like a Ozempic or something like that. When I actually sat down with them for the session and asked, what are you eating? It was a small amount of oats with almond milk and berries for breakfast, salad for lunch, and roasted vegetables for dinner, and they might have some nuts in between as a snack. And it was this client put the weight gain down to having a handful of nuts, which then turned into 2 handfuls, and then 3 handfuls, and then 4 handfuls. And I was like, but this isn't, you know, you. I said the doctors are kind of mad here, because fine, they're saying that you putting on weight is affecting your current ailments, but what do they want you to what if you take this Ozempic, you're literally going to go anorexic. Like, you can't eat less than what you're eating
Mm,
already. And I mentioned, and they're, they've done so much research. Everything they're doing is kind of on point, if you like. I said to them, the Zoe study. No, what's that? Not heard of it. And I think, how have you managed to do so
mm,
much research and not come across it? So I don't think everyone's come across everything, going back to the original point. But what this person also, we kind of acknowledged in the session, is they're pretty much eating no fat.
mm.
And so that's
But
not actually a good
that's
thing.
another common misconception, though, isn't it? Because you were told, do you remember, like, oh God, I can't. I mean, I have real butter, like Kerrygold, grass-fed butter. I will have that, and I just and that's since did CrossFit and paleo and everything, and that was the best butter to have. That that gave you the most advantage, and not having. I cannot stand margarine, the closest molecular structure to plastic, and things. But back in the 80s, you would margarine, and I can just remember it, having it on toast and just being. And I think I stopped having toast because my mum was buying things, because I just couldn't have it. But then you were told that oh, you can't have butter because it's full of fat, and that's really bad for you. And I saw in a post, I was on LinkedIn. I find LinkedIn interesting in the health posts that I see on there. I'd like to wade in, but I think I can't be bothered, because people on there aren't necessarily, from the people that I see, they're like, somebody was put a comment on there about food in some thread that I was looking at, and there's that, yes, and salt's really bad for you too, and I was like, no, it's not. Salt, it's not bad for you. You
Mm,
actually need it.
yeah.
And but like, you just like the lack of either people doing research into what is good, or they've just been brainwashed. And it is definitely a certain age group as well,
There's also
are believe this kind of thing.
there's also different experts, aren't there? Because there's certainly some experts who believe in a vegan diet, and that's the way that we, like a real plant-based.
But then if that works for people, like say that they've got an aversion to, I don't know, they don't even like the taste of meat, some people, then,
Mm.
well, if it works for them, fine. But then I don't think personally you're going to get all of your, well, not personally, just
Well, it
from
doesn't.
research I've done, you're not going to get all of your nutrients and your fats, like you say,
But then there's some
and
people.
ultra processed.
I just think that it's too, going back to the original question, should the governments tax unhealthy lifestyles? Who determines what's healthy and what's unhealthy? And there's so many different opinions out there. But I wonder if there's a kind of um, some kind of biometric test that they can bring in that determines how healthy your body is, or whether it would be, I think it would become too personalized, but whether you could commit to changes. So I think you'd have to bring them functional doctors into it rather than medical doctors. Um, but like you brought up the
RFK
IBS.
over here to help us.
Who's the RFK?
Robert Kennedy over in the
Oh,
US, isn't he?
okay, yeah, I know who Robert
He's
Kennedy
he's
is. Yeah,
sorting everyone out over there. Get him over to give us some advice to our boomer health minister that we've
yeah,
got currently.
yeah. I don't think you could ever have two people agree on what's healthy, what's not healthy, and who's healthy and who's not healthy. Um,
Yeah, yeah, because it's not just about being overweight, underweight, or whatever else. Like, there's a girl that I know, a younger girl, and she's got quite bad. Well, she did have quite bad skin, and I would sit there and I'd say to her, "How she was quite young, like just a little bit older than Sean, so mid-20s," and and I'd say to her, "What's your diet like?" Not like, obviously going into, because I don't know her in that aspect. So, and she's just like, "Oh yeah, she'd eat," but she was not. She wasn't overweight. She was, if anything, she was skinny, and she would be eating McDonald's, drinking fat Coke, and all of that, and she had terrible skin. I was like, well, have you thought about cleaning your diet up, just doing it for a month to see how your skin is after? Oh no, just take these. Like, no
Yeah.
interest, because but these tablets, I don't know what they're called, they're really severe. They basically dry you out from the inside out, and you can't go out in the sun, you can't drink any alcohol, and there's really, they're really, God knows what they're doing to inside. I don't know what they're called, but God knows what they're doing to you inside, and all because she doesn't want to sort a diet out and test out things that would your body would probably naturally calibrate, and then you wouldn't have such bad skin.
What about then if we were to go, or not? What about? I'm not suggesting this as an option, but do you think if we had if we didn't have an NHS, and so we had to pay for our healthcare, do you reckon people would take more responsibility for it?
Well, look at the States. Do people over there take more responsibility? There's more.
Not by the looks of things.
No, but that's what I mean. So they have to pay a hefty amount. I was looking at some of the stats on this the other day because something came up, and it was like, if you have some bad, if you're at a certain level class of person over there, I don't know whether that's you're not in work or whatever else, and you have a really bad accident before the age of 30, like, it screws you for life. You're in debt for life. So it puts you back down the chain, sort of thing. So I think there's an incentive there, but I don't know if they necessarily do that. And then what
Yeah.
would happen here? Would you have bodies piling up on the streets because people couldn't be bothered to, or didn't have the education to look after? And then what about kids who've been born into families where the parents don't? Yeah, because that's another thing, isn't it, as well? You see overweight children. I mean, it's how far do you take it with kids? It's
Yeah.
not their fault. Their parents are feeding them, or they're, I remember Sean, but she'd get to a certain age and she'd get, I never overfed her. She didn't eat anything terrible, but she'd get a little bit pulky. Then she'd, then she'd grow a bit, and she'd grow into her chubbiness. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? From
But
a little, but she wasn't unhealthy, but
so when you say about overweight, do you bring that up because you think that's what the government might, like, they
I
might,
don't know. I think
or
that's
is
a
it
way of
because
that's a way of visually seeing if something in my I think that people overweight, that's the first sign of somebody that's not very healthy,
it's not
is,
always true though?
but in what way is it not true then?
Well,
If people are
because
overweight, are there really healthy overweight people that have got all that fat around their vital organs?
I don't. So you can measure that on some of these things, the visceral fat,
Yeah.
and I've known very slim people have a lot of visceral fat, and then people who look bigger not have much visceral fat. But I also think that someone can be eating. I think people are different builds,
Mm,
and I don't. I don't think everything can be based on size.
mm,
Definitely not. Um, look at my two kids as an example. Ezra's really, really slim. You couldn't get much slimmer, and then Shiloh's the opposite. And yet they Ezra actually eats more than Shiloh.
mm,
And they both, in terms of health, eat the same quality food, and they both they're both healthy. And in terms of wellness, they're also both healthy. I don't think size, but I don't it wouldn't surprise me if this were to happen. Not that I think it's even anywhere on the radar, but if it were to
mm.
happen, whether weight would come into it, I
Yeah.
suspect it would.
Yeah, this is what I mean.
And
What
I
would
think,
be the measurements? Like, that's like, to me, as a lay person walking around, like, they're not healthy. Then, like, as a quick
yeah.
spot, not saying that absolutely everybody is really unhealthy who's slightly overweight or very overweight, but it's an indicator, a first indicator to me of somebody's mental health as well, I think.
Mm. Yeah. But there's so many
But
other
then,
things that are
yeah,
unhealthy.
but that's what I mean. Then you look at people's, because like when I was talking to Pete about the skin thing yesterday, he's like, oh, he said, I was in a shop yesterday. He said, and this young girl, he said she wasn't very old, and then she turned around and she had like her skin was just like, and I'm not, Sean had acne breakouts when she was younger. That's 100%. And she, both her and I every now and then get some, but clean up your diet and then it goes for us. But that's another indicator, isn't it, that there's something out of balance, perhaps.
Well, I don't
But
think so for teenagers.
not all the time, I'm saying. But like
Mm.
for me, I think there's certain indicators that I would judge people on. But how would a government would they be judging people on that kind of thing? Like, oh, like how deep would they go?
Well, I definitely agree with you about the
I'm
food.
talking about being
100.
judgmental, me.
I yeah, no, I 100% agree with you with the food. And I have now got 3 stories of people who have taken the food intolerance test that I took, and
Mm,
it's made a dramatic difference in their life.
mm.
Um,
In what way?
so, well, one of those stories is me actually. I was waking up with achy finger joints
Yeah,
every
that's right. Yeah.
morning, and I thought I was getting arthritis.
Hmm.
And I kind of just, it wasn't, it didn't affect my life that much that I really bothered thinking about it too much. And I literally thought it was arthritis. And then I did the food intolerance test, not not related to that, just because we got it free, and so I did it.
Yeah.
Came back with these intolerances. I cut out the foods, and I noticed the achy fingers had gone. And I thought it was the foods, but I couldn't be sure. And then recently we went to Bulgaria, and I ate those foods again. It was a bit difficult not to. And the achy fingers came back, and it took 2 weeks. I stopped the foods, and 2 weeks after the stopping foods, the achy fingers went. So
Mm.
that's one story. It's definitely those. And I guess maybe, well, that would have been inflammation. I don't know what it would have looked like on my fingers, and whether I would have been diagnosed in the future with something like arthritis. It would have been some autoimmune
Well,
condition.
this is the thing. It's like Pete's not got the most healthy like when it comes to alcohol.
Yeah.
He drinks a lot and he gets like you were saying the arthritis. But he's like he knows that alcohol makes it worse. So he's like he's got something like I don't know if it's like a form of sciatica. I should have asked him before. But anyway, he went to the doctors about it because it's kind of leading. And he's like, "Oh, you've got arthritis. Here's some tablets and go away." But Pete's then gone back from that and been like, "Right, I don't think it's arthritis." But maybe arthritis will be the end result of it if I don't look at it.
Yeah.
And then he's done some research, he's worked out that he's got perhaps he's had a lot of motorcycling injuries, right, in his legs. So he's got
Mm.
plates and all sorts in there. So he's got to be careful with his mobility or he could end up in a spot of bother. But he's basically worked out there's this thing called like nerve flossing. So he's been
Mm.
doing that and doing these subtle exercises, and it alleviates his need for any of this medication because he's actually found out what the problem is by going and looking at, and it's not arthritis, it's the fact that it's the inflammation caused that could lead to arthritis from him drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he doesn't stop him drinking alcohol, but he knows that's what the cause is. Therefore, doesn't take tablets. Just if he's in pain, he'll stop drinking for a few days.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I have another
That's
friend
taking
who,
responsibility, isn't it? So,
yeah, I had a friend who had a knee operation, and
mm,
afterwards the knee didn't heal. And this went on for, I want to say, about a year. And she was at the point of on crutches, unable to walk. She'd been
mm,
for more scans to check what was going on with the knee. And the consensus was coming to the surgeons bodged it up. Anyway, she did the food intolerance test,
mm.
cut out the foods, and the knee's healed. It's inflammation. So food, I'm totally, absolutely 100% on board with you. And it frustrates me so much when I say to somebody, just do a food
It's
intolerance
dismissal,
test.
isn't it? It's this dismissal of
Just
things.
try it for 2 months. Just try it for two
Yeah,
months, 3 months of your life. That's it. And if it
yeah,
helps, amazing. If it doesn't help, crack on, do what you were doing before, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
just try it.
Mm.
Um, uh, I've got two things I want to say. The first is, again, if you go back to the taxi, you look at someone like Pete who's who's suffered as a result of motorbike accidents,
Yeah.
which is a dangerous hobby. It's a dangerous form of transport. We all know that. We all know multiple. So
He
do
still
you
goes
then
out on his
take it
motorbike.
but that's the thing. Do you then take it to that point where you're going to get taxed because you're doing something that's more dangerous and you're more likely to
Well, the
get
NHS
accidents?
don't like you. That the If you go, he's had multiple hospital visits, and at one point he had, I don't know if it was his, yeah, it must have been his leg, and the I think the surgeon basically said if you'd have got, he was a sympathetic motorcyclist, and he was like, if you'd have got some, it might have been his friend actually, if you'd have got somebody else, they would have probably amputated your leg.
Because they're
But
annoyed.
they do not like motorcyclists in the hospitals.
Um,
And that's not one person that said that, it's more than one person.
yeah, and my brother, he broke his
So that
leg
maybe they get
running
taxed already on it from,
in a different form
maybe
of
there's a
tax.
certain, yeah.
Yeah, my brother broke his hip running the London Marathon from probably, I think he had,
I
or
didn't
did
know
he have a
that.
stress?
Stress
Yeah,
fracture.
I think he probably had a stress fracture. I think that's the story,
And yeah.
which he didn't know about, but would have come probably from all the training. Again, do you say, well, you need to be taxed because actually we
Yeah.
shouldn't be running that intensely
Yeah.
and that much? You can take it too far, can't you? But
You're too healthy. Off with his head.
yeah, well, it's not too help because it's just the other extreme, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
saying
You're
that
taking it too
someone
far.
with an eating disorder where they restrict eating or make themselves sick is healthy just because they're not overweight, but they're not. They've taken it to the each extreme is unhealthy,
Yeah. But
isn't
then
it?
where
And
does the pendulum stop? What is the middle?
yeah, and I've
Or is the
forgotten my
middle even
second
the right
point,
ground?
so we might as well carry on without.
Was it about your, because I did interrupt you about your friend in there.
It was
Anyway.
about no, it was about intolerance tests, but well, no, sorry, I don't know. It was about intolerance tests. I can't remember what it was, so it might come back to me. I should have written it down. I'm totally a blank. I'm gone. The
Yeah,
cacao's come
so
back. The
yeah,
cacao's got to me.
the cacao. Yeah, but I just think, and then do you take it where people need to
I've got
get
it.
more
I've got it
sunlight?
back.
Oh, go on.
Sorry. You
I'll
carry on.
shut up.
Let me
No, no,
write
no,
it
no,
down.
go on.
Okay. I was thinking about how, again, possibly more compassion on our part would be helpful, because I do have a friend who tells me that all of these things are harder for her. Now,
Yeah.
I get very frustrated at that, which I think
Who's
she
your hard?
knows, because I I feel like making these choices have been hard for me as well. And I've used various techniques and strategies to be able to put them into place so that they become, these choices that I think are healthier become my lifestyle. But then you can look at that, and this friend would probably say, yeah, but putting strategies in and processes is easy for you. I don't find that easy. And you can just take it back and take it back, whether it's just a different way of brains working, or whether it's a different
Mm,
way of being brought up, or different schooling that's taught different ways. Like you say to me, or how do you learn, because you seem to find it easy
yeah,
to learn. And I think, well, I don't find it easy to learn, but I've got, I don't retain things, but I've obviously got strategies in place that make it
yeah.
look like I do, or make me achieve. I don't know, I don't feel like I have achieved that much on that basis, but anyway. And so maybe that's where people like you and I come in as hypnotherapists, or therapists in general, and to help people who do find it difficult to do
Mm,
these things. And I think it's not just about, so many people think that as a hypnotherapist, you can have someone come and sit in your chair and you can wave your magic wand and they'll walk out a different person. And it isn't that at all. But helping people find an internal locus of control so that they are no longer saying, I can't do that.
mm. But do you think that people even do you I think that health for me now at my age, and I'm mid to late 40s, um health for me has become a massive priority, but it isn't everyone's.
No,
So
Why is it a priority for you?
because I want to be fit and healthy and not in pain and not for as long as possible. I don't want to be a burden on my daughter either. Like like you were saying, I don't want to be like,
Mm.
oh, and also I want to be, fingers crossed I get grandkids, and I want to be fit and healthy to be able to look after them as well, and to be able to be, I suppose, to contribute towards society as well for as long as possible, rather than being a drain. Like what we're saying now about the healthy versus sort of unhealthy. I don't know. I just think,
And a lot of the time when I'm working with clients, I do values work
mm,
to try and help them find some values if they don't have them already, recognize their values if they do have them
mm,
already. Because I think when you live in a if you're going to make health if you want to live like this,
yeah.
then health is a value. Then or for you it's like
And
being
also walking,
active and
yeah.
you,
And I want to be able to get about, like, I don't want to be, and you see people in the mobility scooters, and I think they're a great thing because people can still get out and about when you're older.
mm,
But I want to be as fit and still walking up mountains, or not so much with Frank, but still going out and doing active things. But then I don't. And that's another thing that I think I was talking to, because I said to Pete the other day, I said, like, even before we had Frank, we would still have dinner and then go out for a walk. People
mm.
don't necessarily. That's not something that people do, because they're like, "Oh, you're right. You've got a dog, so you're always out walking." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I used to be anyway. Before I even had, not as much, admittedly, but I would, and I don't want to ever not be active or not be able to."
Does it frustrate you that people I see this whole thing with taxing unhealthy living, whatever unhealthy living is? um I'm not really interested in that, and it because it doesn't really bother me when people go and use the NHS for stuff that is a direct result of their own behavior. But I I do get frustrated when the people around me um, do something that's detrimental to their health. Because selfishly, going back to what I said at the beginning, I feel like that's going to implicate me, and
Mm.
I do have this kind of why should you do what you want, and then have the expectation that I'll
Yeah,
help
no, I
you,
do. Yeah,
um, because I suppose I'm being a bit I'm saying thinking I'm making hard choices, probably not always, and it goes back to what we talked about at the
yeah,
beginning where I said about your things in your ears, your
yeah,
AirPods, and how I worry about the Bluetooth. You don't worry about
yeah.
the Bluetooth. Is it different?
Maybe I'm worried now because you've now set a new anxiety off in me. Now I'm going to
Next
go and do
week you're
some
going to
deep
turn up with
research.
your plug-in. Yeah, but
Yeah.
there's things that you do that I don't. There's healthy choices that you make that I don't make. And so we're all doing different things.
Mm.
So who am I to decide that just because someone's
Yeah.
doing
Who are you?
one thing different to me?
Yeah. But you're not wrong. So,
Hmm.
you know. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? And then am I gonna be pushing Pete around in a wheelchair soon? Mind you, I suppose it'll give me extra strength, and
You're going to put a positive spin on it. What about the you can do is it do you call it the genetic testing or the DNA test? I've
the
done it, the
ancestry.
ancestry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you
I
can
didn't do the
pick
extra
one.
bit though. You did the extra bit,
No,
didn't
I
you?
didn't. I did
So
traits,
where
but I
is it?
didn't do health. So
So have you got
I
it?
think there's three. No, well, yeah, I did it ages
I
ago,
just
but
did a
you can
base.
do
Yeah.
yeah, but you can do a health. You can do like a health one where it will tell you what ailments you're most prone to. So something like that, I guess, could
How
be.
can it, if because you've got so many external factors? How can that tell you? Because you can change your um pathways and things like that, can't you? So I
You
don't necessarily.
Yeah, but I think there's
It's got
more.
really foggy here.
So I've just done. There's a test you can do if you have a Jewish grandparent. Um, oh, I wish I could find the name. I've
I'm
thrown the.
1% Ashkenazis, Jew. So
Well, I don't know if that
1%.
will qualify you. It's
Yeah.
the oh, hold on. It's the NHS Jewish BRCA testing program. So
Why
there's
do you get special treatment?
well because I'm special. This is why the conspiracy theorists don't like the Jews,
Yeah, entitled.
because we get special NHS treatments. So gene faults in the BR, I think they call it the BRCA, but the BRCA1 and the BRCA2 genes are more common in people with Jewish ancestry, particularly Ashkenazi.
Oh, there you go.
In the Ashkenazi Jewish population, approximately 1 in 40 people have a BRCA gene fault. By comparison, in the general UK population, approximately 1 in 200 250 people have the gene fault. So this gene fault makes you so the female cancer risk over the lifetime to age 80 for the general population is about 14%. People with the gene fault, the BRCA1, it's I've added the percentages up. So breast cancer, it was 11.5 in the general population and 1.5 for ovarian cancer 1.5% and pancreatic cancer 1%. With the gene fault, it's breast cancer 72%, ovarian cancer 44%, and similar with the other gene fault. So it's like it's a 60% higher chance of getting breast cancer and a 43% higher chance of getting ovarian cancer with this gene fault. So whilst I am a firm believer that our diet significantly impacts whether we develop cancer or not, cancer is we're all getting cancerous cells, aren't we, all the time, every day, and it's just our immune system manages to eradicate them. But if our immune system isn't functioning optimally, or it just misses that cell, then that's when they reproduce. And so we know that by eating a certain diet or by not maintaining a healthy
Because it's
inside,
not
we can
100, but
affect
the
that.
thing is with those killer genes and things like that, because I've heard other people talking about this. I think Joe Dispenza says something about this as well, and he says that, like, yes, but not 100% of the people that have that gene will then develop cancer. So then, is it that gene that gives you the cancer, or is it the environmental factors and you grow up in a family, say, of people that are eating certain things, that aren't getting enough sunlight, or are too much sunlight, or whatever, and that's the environment you grow up in, and therefore you develop
Yeah.
that
So
type of cancer.
well,
And yeah, you've got that gene, but
my personal opinion is that you're more likely to develop the original cancerous cell with that gene, and then if your
whether or not it
body
develops.
has the capacity to eradicate it, it will, and if
Yeah,
it doesn't, it doesn't. So if you were
yeah.
to do the ancestry health, not that I did and not that I really want to, but if you were to, then I wonder if you could then live, if you saw that you had like a 50% higher chance of getting whatever, could you
Mm.
then go on and research that one thing and find out the
What
best
things
ways
that
to
you're not
live?
going to do to poke it? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
In my
Or
Zoe
you're best
thing,
living in ignorance.
well, I don't know, in my Zoe thing, they actually tell me all of the bacteria I have in my gut and the foods I can eat to support the good bacteria and the foods that I shouldn't eat to support the bad bacteria.
Mm.
So you can actually really um, positively develop your microbiome as well,
Do you
which is
think that? Do
obviously,
you think that everybody should go on Zoe then to find out
yeah,
what they're? Because I haven't done it,
I think the whole world
but
should
then
do
I
Zoe.
think that I know what is good and bad for me. But then I suppose I don't know what's going on in the old gut, do I?
No, um, I think it's really worthwhile. I think it's probably the most. I have heard there's people um, who are not happy with it,
Oh,
who
really?
what's the word, I can't find the word. This is, we talked about this the other day, not being able to find words. um who are
Unsatisfied.
expert no, not users, experts
I don't
experts
agree
in the
with it.
field of nutrition who don't agree with it. They think that
Ah,
it's not
why
not
not?
doing the right thing. Well, I haven't read anything that hasn't
Oh,
come
okay.
into my echo chamber. I've just
Yeah, of course.
heard someone just told me that they'd read
Dismiss
some
it.
stuff. Yeah. um but I believe it's probably the most up to date in terms of research, the most current kind of thing that
Mm.
we can do. I think nutritional therapists, for example, are fantastic, and I know that they will do tests. They'll take blood tests and they'll send them off, and they'll see what you're deficient in and what you need more of, so that you can eat in a way that's really aligned to you. But I think this Zoe one probably does go one step further, um, and really personalizes it and really gets within to see what's good for you individually. So instead of this trying to follow diet advice online, which might not work for your body, you've got something that really does work just for you. We seem to have talked a lot about food.
I
and
love food.
I think there's
But we
more
did,
like sleep.
Yeah.
People sleep, lack of sleep is really strongly linked to Alzheimer's and dementia. So I think sleep, you know, we're talking about nutrition as if it's the most important thing. I actually reckon there's probably more people in our country damaging themselves and giving themselves an unhealthy lifetime ahead by not prioritizing sleep. Because how many people do you know that give themselves a sleep opportunity of like 8 to 9 hours without a screen a couple of hours before bed so that they fall into a deep sleep quickly?
I don't.
Exactly. So you're going to get taxed. So all of this
Judging
the fat people, that's it. Now you're as
now I'm down. I'm getting I'm getting taxed as well.
exactly.
Yeah, but I'll
But it's
stop it
true,
if
isn't
they
it?
told me to. If they told me to, I'd stop it. I could stop tomorrow if I wanted.
Well, I'm telling you to. You might be able to walk up the mountain, but you'll have dementia, so you'll be going
Yeah,
off
I
the
won't be able to
side.
remember why I got there.
Yeah, exactly. Or how to get back down. You'll be stuck at the top of the mountain with your healthy food. Might be slim.
And I will die on that hill.
Poor Sean. She'll be having to look after you when you keep wandering the streets. Burdensome.
Worse things.
Yeah, but
And then
back.
and then also building muscle as well as you get older, like still
Yep,
doing things to build
movement.
muscle. That's all a part of it. The
Yep.
mobility side. I mean, Pete, I'm not as good as Pete is on it. But he does his very exercises, and you just like so from the mobility aspect as well, because like you can go around throwing weights around all you like and do and walking, but if you're not actually doing the micro stuff that's
Yep.
keeping you going, that's another thing. But then this is it, like I get too involved, I think, in how much in all of the things,
And
whereas other
socializing.
people just don't care.
Socializing has making sure that you're you're in a kind of community of some form, because we are social creatures, and that's going to impact mental health. It doesn't have to be, you don't have, it's not like necessarily about unhealthy socializing, if you like, or bringing, like going to the pub where you might end up drinking alcohol, but just being amongst others, whether it's at something like I did last night, like a gong meditation,
And I don't do that enough, to be
or
fair.
be amongst people. You do get amongst people, don't you?
Not loads, really. Not as much as I used to.
Maybe maybe you check the balance as well, though, because maybe what you used to do might have been too much. But
Yeah,
that there's other
there's a
factors,
lot
aren't there,
more. Yeah, there's a lot
to
that
live a
goes
healthy
into
life.
the healthy lifestyle side of it, and also what the judgment is on what is healthy and what isn't healthy.
Yeah.
Like, somebody could be, say, eat a load of crap, but have all of the other stuff dialed in, like,
Yeah.
whereas I wouldn't say I have everything, like the social aspect. I definitely don't socialise, I don't think, enough.
Or the sleep.
I don't. The sleep's fine for me. It's just that actually, what I do beforehand isn't necessarily. I do get enough. Well, yeah, I do get enough sleep. I'm just up really early with my German Shepherd alarm clock.
And you do a
But
lot of movement. You move a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well,
then, so as an upshot, then do we think that people should be taxed?
no,
No.
don't tax the people. No, I don't.
We
But I
pay enough
will.
bloody tax.
If you're a friend or family of mine and you don't look after yourself,
Yeah,
then
you won't be looking after them.
I
Straight
I
in a
will.
home.
I will, but I'll be bearing it in mind.
Yes. Yes. Maybe you'll be the one doing the taxing.
I'm going to be the one needing looking
Yeah.
after, aren't I? It's all going to
Yeah.
come back and bite me in the bum. Not that I
On
live
that note,
perfectly. Yeah.
We'll end it there.
This
Farewell,
journey of life
See
my
you.
fit friend.
should last our guide together we'll grow, 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 grow. Grow together we'll grow, grow, grow.